Station Nexus 3 looked like someone had designed a prison and forgotten to add the rehabilitation part. Amara stood in the observation corridor, watching the security feeds, and wondered, not for the first time, how her career had led her here. High-security juvenile evaluation, the contract had said. Child psychology expertise required. Nobody mentioned the juvenile was being treated like a war criminal. Commander Thrace landed beside her with a soft flutter of wings. The avian director stood nearly 7 feet tall, his plumage an immaculate silver gray, his eyes sharp and unforgiving. "Consultant Okonkwo," his translator chirped. "Thank you for responding to our urgent request. The situation has become untenable." Amara looked at the screen. "You called me to evaluate a dangerous juvenile subject. I'm looking at a child in maximum security restraints. That child is an apex predator who has injured 3 guards. How old? 6 cycles. In Scarith development terms. So he's 6 years old." Amara's voice went flat. "You're treating a 6-year-old like a violent criminal." Thrace's feathers ruffled. "He is violent. Watch." The screen showed a heavily reinforced cell. In the center, a small figure thrashed against restraints. Wolf-like features, crystalline fur, 6 legs, young, terrified. The cub, Kael, according to the file, was screaming. Wordless, desperate sounds. He threw himself against the chains holding him down, bit at guards who tried to approach, snarled and snapped with genuine fear. Amara recognized every sign: sensory overload, trauma response, panic attack. "This is classic PTSD presentation," she said. "This is a security threat. This is a traumatized child having a meltdown." She turned to face Thrace. "You're restraining a scared kid and wondering why he's aggressive?" The commander's wings spread slightly. Indignation. "He attacked my guards, drew blood. We cannot allow—" "Because you're approaching him like a threat. Look at the body language. He's defensive, not predatory. Every behavior here screams, 'I'm scared, leave me alone.' He's a Scarith, an apex predator species. Their young are naturally aggressive. Their young are naturally protective of themselves. There's a difference." Amara pulled out her tablet, started making notes. "I need to meet him, in a calm, quiet, non-threatening environment." "That's impossible. He cannot be released from restraints." "Then I'm leaving." Thrace's beak clicked. Alarm. "We paid significant fees for your consultation. Then let me do my job." Amara headed for the elevator. "Set up a meeting. Quiet room, no guards visible. I need to assess his actual behavior, not his response to being tortured." "We are not—" "You're restraining a 6-year-old in isolation. That's torture." She hit the elevator button. "Find me when you're ready to let me help him." They put her in an interrogation cell. Steel walls, observation windows, armed guards visible through the glass. Harsh overhead lighting. Amara looked around the room and sighed. "This is the opposite of therapeutic." "It's the only space rated for containing dangerous subjects," Thrace said through the intercom. "He's not a subject. He's a child. A dangerous one." Amara sat down in the single chair provided. "Bring him in." The doors opened. 6 guards entered, weapons ready. Between them, a small figure in heavy restraints. Kael was smaller than she'd expected. Maybe 4 feet long. Covered in silvery blue fur that would probably be beautiful if it wasn't matted and dull. 6 legs moving in agitated patterns, a muzzle covering his face. Wrist and ankle cuffs connected by short chains. He was snarling, thrashing, terrified. The guards positioned him in the center of the room, attached his chains to anchor points in the floor. "There," one guard said. "Secured." Amara looked at Kael, at the way he pulled against the restraints, at the whites showing around his eyes. "Take off the restraints," she said. The room went silent. Then Thrace's voice exploded through the intercom. "Absolutely not! He's a 6-year-old having a panic attack. The restraints are making it worse. He'll attack you. Then I'll deal with it." Amara kept her voice calm. "Remove the restraints or I'm leaving. Your choice." This violates every safety protocol. So does traumatizing children. The guards looked at each other, at Thrace, at Kael, who was still thrashing. We cannot authorize. Fine, Amara stood up. I'll file my report as assessment impossible due to facility's refusal to provide appropriate evaluation conditions. Enjoy your refund request. She headed for the door. Kael made a sound, not a snarl, not a growl, a whimper. Amara stopped, turned. The cub was watching her, still straining against the chains, but watching. She sat back down, pulled out her tablet, started reading her notes. Standard de-escalation. Make yourself non-threatening by being uninteresting. Kael thrashed for another 5 minutes. Amara ignored him. Just sat there, reading, making occasional notes. Not looking at him, not reacting. Just existing in the same space. Slowly, the thrashing decreased. She could see him in her peripheral vision, still restrained. But watching her now, confused. She wasn't yelling, wasn't approaching. Wasn't threatening more restraints. Just sitting there, reading. 10 minutes passed. 15. 20. Kael stopped fighting the chains completely. Just sat there, still bound, watching this strange being who'd invaded his space, and then promptly ignored him. Amara slowly, very slowly, slid her chair a few inches closer. Kael tensed, but didn't lunge. She went back to reading. Another 5 minutes, another small movement of the chair. She was maybe 10 feet away now, close enough to see him clearly. He was thin, underfed. His fur had stress-related bald patches. One ear was torn, old injury, poorly healed. This child had been through hell. Kael's ears twitched. He made a soft sound. Not aggressive. Almost questioning. Amara finally looked at him directly, made eye contact. Hey, she said softly. Rough day, huh? Kael stared at her. Then he lunged. Guards burst through the door, weapons raised, shouting, "Stop!" Amara's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone froze. Kael was straining against his chains, but not toward Amara. Toward the observation window, where more guards had appeared, armed, ready. He's not attacking me, Amara said calmly. He's trying to protect himself from them. He lunged. At the people who've been hurting him. She stood slowly. Commander Thrace, clear the observation rooms. Remove all visible guards. Or I walk. That's against. I don't care. Amara's patience was gone. Clear the guards or I'm done. Silence. Then Thrace's reluctant voice. Guards, exit the observation areas. Maintain emergency positions. The figures in the windows disappeared. Kael's tension decreased immediately. His ears came forward slightly. Amara sat back down, looked at him. Better? Kael made another soft sound, still wary, but not aggressive. Then his entire body started shaking. Not aggression, not another lunge. He was crying. Small broken sounds emerged from behind the muzzle. The violent predator was sobbing. Exhausted, terrified, desperate. And Amara realized, this child wasn't dangerous. He was desperate for someone who wouldn't hurt him. She'd found plenty of violent kids in her career, kids who genuinely enjoyed causing harm. This wasn't that. This was a traumatized child who'd learned that fighting was the only way to survive. Oh, kiddo, Amara said softly. Kael's eyes met hers. And for the first time since she'd arrived, she saw hope instead of fear. She was going to have words with Commander Thrace about how they'd been handling this case. Strong words, probably unprofessional ones. But first, she needed to help this scared kid stop crying. The rest could wait. Amara had spent 12 hours arguing with Commander Thrace. Now she stood in a different room, still steel-walled, still monitored. But at least the guards weren't visible through windows. This is insane, Thrace's voice crackled through her earpiece. You're requesting to be alone with a violent predator. Unrestrained. I'm requesting a proper therapy session with a traumatized child. No guards in sight, no restraints. Just me and Kael. He'll kill you. He's a traumatized 6-year-old. Let me do my job or find someone else. Silence. Then, we've positioned emergency response teams outside, hidden observation cameras throughout the room. If he shows any aggression, then you'll traumatize him further and prove you learned nothing. Amara settled into her chair. Bring him in. The doors opened. Kael entered, still in full restraints. Muzzle, cuffs, chains. He saw Amara and his ears came forward slightly. Recognition. The guards started to attach his chains to the floor anchors. Leave them off, Amara said. Ma'am, I'll attach them if needed. Leave us. The guards looked at each other, at their restraint protocols, at the small child standing in heavy chains. They left. Amara stood slowly, approached Kael with careful, measured movements, his ears flattened, wary, but not aggressive. She knelt beside him. Hey, kiddo, remember me? Kael made a soft sound, not threatening, almost hopeful. I'm going to take these off, Amara said quietly. They look uncomfortable. She reached for the muzzle clasp. Through her earpiece, she heard Thrace's panicked breathing. Guards probably had weapons aimed at her through hidden cameras. The muzzle came off. Kael could have bitten her, could have lunged. He just stared at her. She removed the wrist cuffs, the ankle chains, one by one, until he was completely free. For the first time since arriving at this facility, Kael had no restraints. He just sat there, watching her. Amara returned to her chair, pulled out her tablet, started making notes. Classic non-threatening presence. Be boring. Let him make the first move. Through the earpiece. She's insane. He's going to... Amara turned off the earpiece. The first hour passed in silence. Kael stayed where he was, 10 feet away. Just watching. Amara worked on her notes. Occasionally glanced at him. No pressure. No expectations. Around the 40-minute mark, Kael shifted position slightly, moved a few inches closer. Amara didn't react, just kept working. Another 10 minutes. Another small movement. By the end of the hour, Kael had moved to about 5 feet away from her chair. Still cautious. Still watching. But approaching. You can come closer if you want, Amara said softly. Or stay there. Whatever feels safe. Kael's ears twitched. Processing. He took another step forward. Then another. Then he was right beside her chair. He sat down, on the floor, right next to her. Leaned slightly against the chair leg. First physical contact initiated by him, seeking comfort, proximity, safety. Amara continued working. Occasionally spoke to him in soft, calm tones. You're okay. Nobody's going to hurt you here. You're safe. Kael made small vocalizations. Not words. His species developed language later. But sounds. Communication attempts. Amara responded to each one. Yeah, I hear you. I know. It's been rough. Through the observation feeds, which Amara couldn't hear because she'd turned off her earpiece, the facility's xenopsychology team was having a collective breakdown. Impossible. She's established pack dominance through passive submission. The subject has imprinted on her as alpha. This violates all known Scarith social patterns. She's creating psychological dependency. One scientist scribbled frantically. Human demonstrates species-specific bonding protocols previously undocumented in cross-species applications. If Amara had been listening, she would have sighed. She was just being calm. This was therapy, not magic. But the galaxy seemed determined to make it complicated. The disaster started on day 3. Commander Thrace demanded a demonstration of control. Amara looked at him through the observation window. He's not a dog. He's a child. We need proof that your methods are effective, that he can be managed. He's not being managed. He's being helped. Semantics. We need to verify that I can command him to attack on cue. Pass. Amara turned back to Kael, who was sitting peacefully beside her chair. Find another circus. Thrace's feathers ruffled. This facility has protocols, safety requirements. If you cannot demonstrate adequate control, Then what? You go back to restraining a traumatized child until he breaks completely? We will test his aggression response. Standard procedure. Amara stood. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. It's happening. Stand clear. The door opened. A guard entered in full tactical gear. Kael's response was immediate. He went from peaceful to defensive in a heartbeat, snarling, positioning himself between the guard and Amara, fur bristling, every muscle tense. See. Thrace's voice carried triumph. Violent response, still dangerous. He's protecting me, Amara shouted back. There's a difference. The guard advanced, following orders. Approaching subject. Kael's snarl intensified. He was poised to lunge. Amara stepped between them, put herself between Kael and the guard. Kael, look at me. The cub's eyes snapped to her face. It's okay. He's not going to hurt us. I need you to calm down. Kael was still tense, still positioned to defend. Kael, sit. He didn't move. Too focused on the threat. Amara knelt, gently touched his shoulder. First time she'd initiated contact. Please, for me. Kael looked at her, at the guard, at her again. Then he sat, immediately, right beside her chair. Wouldn't move. Wouldn't look at the guard. Just focused on Amara. The room went silent. Thrace's voice came through speakers. Consultant, ask him to approach the guard. No. This is a direct order. I'm not traumatizing him to prove a point. Amara stood. Guard, leave. Session over. The guard retreated. Kael relaxed slightly but stayed pressed against Amara's chair. She sat back down. Kael immediately leaned against the chair leg again. His safe spot. His anchor point. Over the next hour, staff tried to interact with Kael. Bring him food. Check his health status. He wouldn't cooperate with anyone. Snarled if they approached. Calmed only when Amara intervened. He would only respond to her. Only sit beside her chair. Only relax in her presence. The facility had a new problem. The dangerous predator cub had bonded to the human psychologist so completely that he was unmanageable by anyone else. Amara was the only person who could handle him, and she had absolutely no authority to take him out of this facility. Commander Thrace appeared at the observation window. This is unacceptable. Amara looked up from where she was sitting. Kael pressed against her chair. What is? You've made him dependent on you. Created an attachment that violates. I've made him feel safe for the first time in his life. That's called attachment theory. It's normal child development. He won't cooperate with our staff. Because your staff traumatized him. He associates them with pain. Amara scratched behind Kael's ears absently. He leaned into the touch. You broke his trust. That doesn't rebuild overnight. This cannot continue. Your contract was for evaluation, not long-term care. Then you have a problem, because separating him from me now will cause severe psychological damage. Kael made a soft sound, pressed closer to her chair. Amara looked at the cub, at his trust, at the way he'd finally stopped being terrified every moment. We'll figure something out, she said quietly. But she had no idea what. The facility wanted her gone. Kael wanted her to stay, and somewhere in the bureaucratic nightmare of galactic regulations, there had to be a solution. She just had to find it. Before they tried to separate a traumatized child from the only safe person he'd ever known. The notification came on day 5. Your assessment contract is complete. Thank you for your services. Departure shuttle departs at 800 hours. Amara read the message twice. Looked at Kael, who was sitting peacefully beside her chair. They're ending my contract, she said quietly. Kael's ears came up. Alert. Confused. She stood. Started gathering her belongings. Kael stood too. Watching her. Tension building in his posture. When she moved toward the door, he followed. Kael. Stay. He didn't stay. He pressed closer, making anxious sounds. The door opened. Amara stepped through. Kael tried to follow. Guards blocked him, and the cub went ballistic, thrashing, screaming. Sounds of pure terror and desperation. He threw himself at the guards, not attacking, trying to get past them to reach Amara. They grabbed him, tried to restrain him. He fought like his life depended on it. "Stop!" Amara shoved past the guards. "You're traumatizing him." The moment she was visible, Kael's struggling decreased. He was still making distressed sounds, still straining toward her, but the panic ebbed slightly. She knelt beside him. The guards were still holding him down. "Let him go." "Ma'am. Protocols." "Let him go." They released him. Kael immediately pressed against her, shaking, making small, broken sounds. Amara wrapped her arms around him. "I'm here. It's okay. I'm here." He calmed, slowly, still trembling, but no longer fighting. She guided him back to the room. He immediately went to his spot, right beside her chair, and sat. Commander Thrace appeared at the observation window, feathers bristling with agitation. "This is unacceptable. You've made him dependent on you." "I've made him feel safe," Amara shot back. "First time in his life, apparently. This attachment violates every protocol." "Your protocols are what broke him in the first place." A new voice cut through the intercom. Chiming, crystalline. Fascinating. A being that looked like living quartz floated into view. Scholar Prism. Lead xenopsychologist. "The human has created unprecedented interspecies psychological dependency. This must be studied." Amara was so tired. "It's called attachment theory. It's normal child development. Not across species lines. The bonding patterns are the same. Traumatized kids need stability, safe adults, consistent care. Species doesn't change the basics." Scholar Prism's crystalline structure pulsed with excitement. "I must document this, publish findings, the implications for cross-species juvenile rehabilitation." "Are that you've been doing it wrong for decades," Amara interrupted. "That's the implication." She demanded Kael's full file. Thrace resisted. Amara threatened to file formal complaints with the Galactic Child Welfare Commission. She got the file. Reading it made her want to scream. Kael was a war orphan. His entire pack, parents, siblings, extended family, killed in a territorial conflict between Scarith clans 6 months ago. He'd been found alone, injured, terrified. Rescued by well-meaning soldiers who had no idea how to handle a traumatized predator cub. Brought to this facility for safekeeping and rehabilitation. Had been in restraints ever since because he was too aggressive to handle. Amara looked up from the file at Commander Thrace. "You've been torturing a traumatized orphan for 6 months? We were following safety protocols." "You were following protocols designed for violent adults." "He's 6. She threw the tablet down. "He watched his entire family die. Then was restrained, isolated, and treated like a monster for 6 months. Of course he was violent. It was the only way to protect himself." Thrace's wings shifted uncomfortably. "We did what we thought." "You did what was easy, not what was right." Amara looked at Kael, who was watching the argument with anxious ears. "Has anyone tried to give him actual trauma care? Therapy? Basic kindness? We are not equipped for— You're not equipped to care for children. Period." She stood. "Which is why I'm staying until we figure out proper placement." "Your contract." "I'm extending it. Bill the Galactic Child Welfare Commission. They'll pay, especially when I tell them what I found here." Thrace's beak clicked shut. Over the next 3 days, Amara demonstrated proper trauma-informed care, teaching Kael that he was safe, building trust through consistent, gentle interaction, basic attachment building. The transformation was remarkable. When Amara was present, Kael was a normal kid, playful, curious, gentle. He'd bring her things he found interesting, make soft sounds that were clearly attempts at conversation, even play, something the staff had never seen him do. But the moment she left, he reverted, anxious, defensive, wouldn't eat, wouldn't cooperate. With facility staff, they tried to feed him, He refused food from their hands, tried to check his health. He snarled and backed into corners. Only Amara could approach him. Only she could calm him. "Because you traumatized him," she told them again and again. "He associates you with pain. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight." Scholar Prism published preliminary findings. Human bonding techniques, psychological conditioning through selective calm. Completely wrong, but enthusiastically documented. Amara was so tired of being misunderstood. She wasn't conditioning anyone. She was just being a safe adult to a scared kid. But the galaxy seemed determined to make it complicated. The order came on day 8. Commander Thrace entered the observation room with formal documents. The Scarith Rehabilitation Authority has been notified of Kael's presence. They're sending representatives to transfer him to a proper facility. Amara looked up from where she was sitting. Kael was dozing against her chair. A proper facility? Scarith run. Their species, their methods. More appropriate than keeping him in a multi-species detention center. When? 24 hours. Kael's ears twitched. He wasn't asleep. "No," Amara said. "This isn't a request. The transfer order. We'll traumatize him. Again. Moving him from the one person he trusts to strangers of his own species who use the same safety protocols that broke him in the first place. They are better equipped. Are they? Have they been trained in trauma-informed care? Do they understand attachment theory? Or will they see a violent cub and put him back in restraints?" Thrace's feathers ruffled. "That's not..." Kael sat up, alert now, watching. "I'm not letting you send him somewhere that will hurt him again," Amara said. "You have no authority. I have professional authority as a licensed child psychologist, and I'm formally recommending against this transfer on grounds of severe psychological risk." Scholar Prism drifted closer to the observation window. "The human demonstrates protective behavior toward the subject. Fascinating cross-species maternal response patterns." "I'm demonstrating basic professional ethics," Amara snapped. The meeting continued. Arguments, bureaucratic justifications, legal precedents. Kael sat beside Amara's chair through all of it. Quiet, still. Until Thrace said, "The decision is final. Transfer occurs tomorrow at 0900 hours. Guards will collect the subject." "No." Everyone stopped. Because the voice wasn't Amara's. It was small, young, uncertain, but clear. Kael was looking directly at Commander Thrace. "No. Stay with her." The observation room went absolutely silent. Thrace's beak opened, closed. He spoke. Standard language. Scholar Prism's crystalline form pulsed rapidly. "Impossible. Scarith juveniles are pre-verbal until 12 cycles. He's 6. This violates all developmental models." Amara knelt beside Kael. "Did you just..." Kael looked at her. "Stay. Please." His pronunciation was awkward, unpracticed, but unmistakable. A 6-year-old Scarith cub had just spoken standard language, years before his species was supposed to develop that capability. "Stress-accelerated development," Amara whispered. "Traumatized kids develop faster when they feel safe. It's documented in human children. I never thought..." Kael pressed against her. "No go. Stay with you." Thrace was still frozen. This changes." Scholar Prism was already recording. "Unprecedented cognitive acceleration in juvenile Scarith subject. Cross-species bonding triggers advanced language development. Revolutionary implications for..." "For what?" Amara stood, one hand on Kael's shoulder. "For understanding that when you actually care for traumatized children, instead of restraining them, they can heal and grow." She looked at all of them through the observation window. Kael just spoke, for the first time in his life, to tell you he doesn't want to be taken away from the only person who's ever made him feel safe. Kael leaned against her leg. "Stay," he said again. Quieter, scared. "I know, buddy," Amara said softly. "I know." The transfer order sat on the table. 24 hours until they'd take him. Unless Amara could figure out how to stop it. The facility descended into bureaucratic chaos. Xenopsychologists demanding to study Kael's impossible language development. linguists wanting brain scans, developmental specialists insisting this violated every known model of SCIFI cognitive progression. Impossible! Scholar Prism's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. SCIFI juveniles don't develop standard language until 12 cycles. Amara, exhausted, looked up from her chair. Kael was pressed against her leg, making small, anxious sounds at all the commotion. Traumatized kids develop faster when they feel safe, she said. It's stress-accelerated development, documented in multiple species, including humans. But the cognitive leap required is what happens when a child finally has the mental energy to learn instead of just survive. Kael wouldn't leave her side, literally wouldn't move from beside her chair. When facility staff approached, he got defensive, not violent, protective, positioning himself between them and Amara. Guards came to prepare him for transfer. He snarled, backed into the corner beside her chair. Amara stood, put herself between Kael and the guards. "You're not taking him." Commander Thrace's voice crackled through the intercom. "You have no authority to prevent—" "I'm a licensed child psychologist. This child has clearly chosen his guardian. Forcing separation will cause severe psychological damage. He's not human. He's not your species. He's a traumatized kid who needs stability. Species doesn't matter. The law is clear. Juveniles must be placed with their own kind. Show me the regulation." Silence. "Show me," Amara repeated. "The specific regulation that says traumatized children must be separated from caregivers they've bonded with just because of species difference." More silence. Then Scholar Prism. "Actually, there may be a precedent. Interspecies Guardianship Protocol 93. Amara pulled up her tablet, started searching. Protocol 93 was obscure, buried in 300-year-old Galactic Council regulations. But it was there. If a juvenile demonstrates clear attachment to a qualified caregiver across species lines, and separation would cause demonstrable psychological harm, temporary guardianship may be granted pending proper species-appropriate placement. Amara read it 3 times, then started filling out forms. Commander Thrace appeared at the observation window. "You cannot be serious. I'm requesting temporary guardianship under Protocol 93. "This is absurd. You can't just adopt an alien child." "I'm not adopting. I'm requesting temporary guardianship pending proper placement with qualified SCIFI caregivers who won't traumatize him. The SCIFI government will never—" The doors opened. An elderly SCIFI female entered, larger than Kael would ever be. Silver-gray fur, scarred from decades of life. Eyes that had seen too much. Elder Mira, according to the introduction that followed. She approached slowly. Kael tensed but didn't snarl, recognized his own species. Mira spoke in SCIFI. Soft, clicking sounds. Kael responded haltingly. First time Amara had heard him speak his native language. Mira settled onto the floor, watched Kael, watched Amara. "Our species has a saying," she said in standard. "The cub chooses the den." Thrace's feathers ruffled. "He's chosen poorly. She's not even. She's the first being to treat him with kindness." Mira's eyes were steady. "That is qualification enough." "But protocol demands—" "Protocol," Mira interrupted, "created this broken child in the first place. Perhaps it is time we learned from those who heal instead of harm." She stood, approached Amara. "I will support your guardianship request, and I will teach him our ways, our language, our culture, so he knows his heritage." "Thank you," Amara said quietly. "But he stays with you, until he chooses otherwise." Mira looked at Kael. "If he chooses otherwise." Kael pressed closer to Amara's chair. His choice was clear. 6 months later, Amara's temporary office had become permanent. The Interspecies Juvenile Rehabilitation Program operated out of Station Nexus 3, funded by the Galactic Council, studied by a dozen research teams, replicated across 3 sectors. Kael was her assistant. He'd grown, fur shinier, more confident, speaking both standard and SCIFI fluently now. But he still sat beside her chair during sessions. It was his safe spot. His anchor. Today's client was a young Quillen, insectoid species, traumatized by colony collapse. Aggressive, defensive, scared. Kael sat calmly beside Amara's chair, demonstrating safe adult behavior, non-threatening presence. The Quillen watched, wary. "You're safe here," Amara said softly. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The Quillen didn't believe her. Why would it? Adults had heard it before. But Kael was there. Another child. Calm. Peaceful. Eventually the Quillen approached. Not Amara. Kael. They made small sounds at each other. Communication. Then the Quillen sat. Near the chair. The safe spot. Amara smiled. Made notes. Scholar Prism had published 12 papers on human psychological conditioning techniques. All enthusiastically wrong. But the galaxy was learning. Commander Thrace still insisted she'd somehow dominated Kael through unknown psychological manipulation. Elder Mira visited every week, teaching Kael Scarith traditions. He was thriving in both cultures. The evening session ended. The Quillen left with its guardian. Progress made. Amara pulled out her recording device. Final report for the Galactic Council. Quarterly assessment. Interspecies Juvenile Rehabilitation Program, she began. Kael looked up at her, made a soft, affectionate sound. She scratched behind his ears absently. He leaned into it. They tried to chain the alpha cub, but he sat quietly only beside the human's chair. Not because I dominated him. Because I showed him what safety felt like. She looked at the empty room. At her chair. At Kael beside it. Turns out traumatized kids need attachment, not restraints. Revolutionary concept, apparently. Kael shifted position. Still beside the chair. Always beside the chair. They wanted to know my secret to controlling dangerous predator cubs. The secret? She looked directly at the camera. I treated them like children instead of threats. Kael didn't choose violence. He chose kindness. Outside, the station hummed with life. Other programs inspired by this one. Other traumatized young, finally getting proper care. And somehow, that simple choice, a traumatized predator cub choosing to sit quietly beside a human's chair, instead of fighting everyone who hurt him, changed the galaxy's entire approach to juvenile rehabilitation. Kael made another sound. Contented. Safe. The bar was low, Amara said, but we cleared it, one chair at a time. She ended the recording. Kael was already dozing, his safe spot, his home. Not because she'd chained him there, because he'd chosen it. And that choice had changed everything.